Okay, so I wanted to go over three of my favorite kind of techniques and tips when I'm recording and processing audio. The first thing I want to show you is how I process the drums during the tracking phase. The microphone that I used on this one, for the inside mic, I used a 421, Sennheiser 421, and the outside mic, I used a Neumann kind of knockoff 47 FET. So the first thing that I want to do is actually, I'm going to add a preamp. And what I've done is add this preamp, and I got it to where it's just starting to get some drive, but to where this light isn't really blinking too much. We don't want to oversaturate it. And then as soon as I go through the preamp, I'm going to want to EQ it. Again, I'm using Neve style preamps and EQs, the 1073. And what I'm doing is I'm going to scoop out a little bit of the low mids, about 360, and then I want to boost the attack, like really where the beater is really hitting and getting the most energy out of that, and then boosting some about 123, just a little bit, just to give a nice overall kick drum sound, and then I'm adding a little bit of air. So here's with just the preamp, and I'll engage the EQ in and out so you can hear the difference. Okay, now I'm going to do the same kind of idea with the outside kick drum. A lot of times I'll boost just a little bit if it needs it. This one I don't think it does. Again, I'm taking out the lower mids, 360, and then adding just a little bit more of the attack, but not too much because that's what our inside microphone is doing, and just a click of air. Okay, so let's listen to the before and after. Okay, nice and thumping, nice and clean. And then what I'm going to end up doing is actually bust these two together. Now I like to bust them together, so one, to reduce track count, but I like to compress them together as one cohesive instrument rather than trying to compress both of them and having it kind of get a weird pumping sound. In the analog world, I would do that using an SSL summing type amp. So that's what I've done. So these are now bussed together. See, kick some, and it's feeding into here. Again, with this one, I don't want to drive too much saturation, but I do want the sound of the console. With the compressor, I like to use I don't want to compress it too much. Using this type of compressor, it's going to give it a little more of a point, a little more focus. I'm having the slowest attack that this Focusrite does and the quickest release. And I'm only going to be doing about no more than 3 dB of compression. Okay, so we'll listen to it with now both microphones bussed together, and then I'll turn on the compressor and see if you can hear the point, the focus that the kick drum gives. I did have to add a little bit more threshold, but yeah, it's giving it more of a focus point. And then the next thing I do is I have it go through an API for some overall EQ. I've taken out some of some more mids, added a little more of the attack. Sometimes if the kick needs it, I'll add a little bit low end, but again, this kick is thumping really well. Once we engage the tape machine, that's going to actually help it give it more roundness and more of a thump as well. So let's engage this overall EQ and see how that sounds. Okay, so that's thumping pretty good. And the last thing, again, in the analog world, we would have sent this to tape. and since I want that to kind of have the tape saturation for all the tracks, I want my starting point to be really strong. So I have it go to tape, and I'm having it go to a 16 track. I want it 30 inches per second. All my tracks I'm going to process during the tracking phase are all going to be 30 inches per second. So again, it has, I mean, I know we can be really creative and use different things, but I'm trying to use these tools, use these plugins as the actual hardware that I would have done in a real recording studio. And again, kind of the sweet spot is anywhere between 7 and 3. So I have it saturating pretty good there, and then I'm also adjusting the level so we're not recording it too hot. Okay, so obviously I did saturate a little bit more just to get in that sweet spot, gave it a little more level, but we don't want to overdo it because we still want to have enough headroom sonically, so because we will compress it more during the mixing phase and be able to adjust faders and not worry about clipping in the long run. So that's it for the kick drum. Let's listen to what it sounded like before and after. Okay, so hopefully you can tell a difference. This is the step you need to take to get your initial tracks ready for mixing. Okay, for my next trick, I want to bring up something that has happened to me in the studio before, and sometimes happens to you guys who may be recording a bigger drum set or having a bigger session than what you have inputs and microphones. Sometimes you just run out. And I did a session when I was working at a studio in Las Vegas where the whole band wanted to play and the drummer came in and he just had a huge drum set. And we ran out of inputs. And so we only had a top microphone and we didn't have one on the bottom. So what do you do if you still want more of the snare sound, but you didn't record the snare drum or the bottom microphone? And one of the ways to do this is to actually use white noise. So what I'll do is I'll actually I'm going to send it to this gate. We're actually just going to have it key from the bus that I sent. So now whenever the snare drum is going to hit, it's going to trigger this gate to open. So let's go and see what this will do. Okay, so there the gate closes. So obviously it's opening every time the snare is hitting. It's triggering a little bit just with those little ghost notes, but we're not going to really worry about that. And so to spare your ears, I've just done some white noise and adjusted the level. And so now, like if I sent this pre-fader, okay, so that's obviously triggering the snare sound. So now we engage these together. So that's definitely more audible than what we would actually want to hear. But when all the drums are mixed in, you're really not going to notice it. You're just going to kind of sense the snare sound. But for whatever reason, the bottom snare doesn't get recorded. This is a quick fix. For my final trick, I want to show you how I process the toms. Now I'm going to process them kind of like how we did the kick drum where it goes through a preamp and then EQ. I do not compress the toms, but I do have them go to tape. But I do this one other thing because one of the issues with toms is that we want them to be nice and clear, punchy, but they need some weight to them. And one of the tricks that I've learned over the years is to actually, I have the tom mics, I used an RE20 microphone, which is usually used for broadcasting. Just through trial and error, I really like these on toms. Actually, let's listen to it real quick by itself. So here's the rack tom, and here's our floor tom. So already recorded really well, but we're going to use a tube-based preamp for it. With the EQ, once again, I've scooped out kind of the lower mids. I want to make sure that the attack, right where the stick is hitting the drum head, that's really getting through, adding a little air, and then adding a little bit of body. So let's go ahead and hear what that sounds like just with the rack tom first. Okay, nice and clear, nice and crisp, clear, and with good body. But we want more weight to it. So what I'm going to do is actually, I'm going to send the signal out after it's been EQ'd, and then it's going to this aux track. And what I've done is I've added this sonic maximizer, which is basically a harmonic generator, and other things, anything that's going to enhance frequencies. This is going to go with the rack tom parallel. So first the signal is coming out of this channel, running into here, and then what's happening is that these are going to get bussed together to this aux track. Okay, some really good punch. So once again, they're getting bussed together, so I want to go through a sub-mixer, or in this case, the mix bus. And I like APIs. I love how it sounds on toms, really punchy, very clean. And again, just kind of having it saturate just a little bit. I mean, I'm hitting it a little bit harder, and once again, we're going to have it go to the tape machine, and I want to hit a little bit harder than some of the other drums and make sure that there's enough headroom. The nice thing about with the tape machine is it's going to kind of round off the top as well. So let's listen to what that sounds like. And even though I'm not going through a compressor with the toms, this is going to give it some bit of compression. Okay, so this one's ready to go. Let's go ahead and do our floor tom real quick. Okay, once again, got our tube preamp, low mids, got our attack, some air, and some body. So let's listen to what that sounds like. Okay, and then we're sending our signal out, busting out of here. Okay, definitely adding some weight. And then through our mix bus. And then finally our tape machine. Okay, now that all the drums are processed, let's go ahead and hear how it sounds with it processed and then what we had originally. So originally it did sound good. I mean, it was a good recording, but you can see like how processing it, with just a little bit of processing, not really cutting a lot of frequencies, not really compressing it. It's just a much better starting point from when you want to start mixing. So if you learn anything new, go ahead and hit that like button. And if you want to know more information and learn some more tricks, go ahead and click the link below to find out more from Think Analog Work Digital. I hope this helps, and we'll talk again soon.